facts. It's intense, but we try to just remind you guys that we're human and we can lighten things up a bit.
Absolutely, yes. We're here to have a good time as always and keep you informed. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was one of those slow weekends when you're at home.
Was it
just
slow?
All through. For me, it dragged a bit.
Now, one of the banks tested me this weekend, and I just no, this is not going to happen. I went to a restaurant and I paid, and I got a declined receipt, and I did a transfer to them. I had no idea that the money was taken even with the declined receipt. So I got home and randomly just checked my account, and I saw a chunk of, what I paid was missing. And I'm like, wait, I didn't panic. So I had to go to the trash, look for the receipt.
Yeah.
And I called the restaurant and they tell me, oh, no, that the POS behaves like that. And I'm sorry, why would you have customers pay with the POS that behaves like that? I said, oh, they're going to do a refund after a couple of days. How long? They have no idea. So all of that, I just pray to my God, please.
Top prayer points.
This money has to come
I'm afraid to ask you, what did you eat there that requires prayer points for the money to come back? All right. I will join you in prayers. Okay. But yeah, it happens. Because the last thing you want is to have to... That one definitely you have to resolve with them, not the bank.
Not the bank.
Yeah.
No, they actually told me to go to the bank to resolve with the bank since it's a decline issue that the bank...
Well, is it a decline issue or they actually got...
They got the money, but there's a decline issue. The receipt...
They should refund you your money,
John. Anyway, I'm going to call them later and speak some English and see how that plays out eventually.
Now, money matter, I don't say English, no, they work.
All right, we'll go through some of the big stories today and get your thoughts and opinions on that. It's been a very busy weekend.
Yeah.
Lots of things happening in Nigeria. A lot of people are still reacting to the elections. We've got the gubernatorial coming up on the 11th, and there are questions as to if it's going to get postponed as well, because the aggrieved parties from the presidential elections are asking to monitor the materials used for the elections, but then INEC is also asking the appeal court to allow them reset the Beavers machine. So if that is done, this aggrieved parties will not be able to get the data that they need from this machine. So it's a bit of a back and forth right now.
It's an interesting back and forth because you can't, at this point, even think about deleting any important data that will be required in court at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's a rock and a hard place. We'll see how the Court of Appeal is going to interpret this and what it means for the petitions that would get to the tribunal eventually there. So, well, it's interesting. I actually saw the report this morning, all right. And then I recall someone I know, a tech expert, was talking about, they would need to initially. The story making the round was the iRev itself and the portal, and they corrected it and said it was Beavers. But even with the Beavers, for you to be able to compute issues around overvoting and the likes of that, you need that information.
Yes.
So it's not one that you just delete. And even if you're reconfiguring the Beavers, is there a backup where we're sure that any information that is required from the Beavers, it's there and not compromised at all? Lots of questions begging for answers. But if it's going to affect the timing of the governorship election, that's another kettle of fish altogether. But yeah, we'll be looking at some of these stories on the roundtable today. So we officially welcome you to the show. We'll start off looking at some of the big stories driving conversation from now till 4:30. And at the 5 o'clock hour, the Director of Programs, Yaiga Africa, Cynthia Mbamalu, will join us for a conversation. We're going to have, an in-depth analysis, assessment of the 2023 Presidential and National Assembly election from the perspective of what they reported, what they saw, and their own tabulation. And perhaps get to even understand if we benefited so much from the technology that was so hyped, the excitement around the Electoral Act, the amendment, how much benefit did we see?
I was thinking today, and I was wondering, we were supposed to use tech for this election. I would assume that once the results were collated at the various polling units, they'll be putting to the Beavers. So for each party, which I would guess would be listed, they'll put into each party, then click the send button, and then it goes to a general server. beaver, you know, and INEC is able to retrieve and we can see like real time of that. I just kept wondering why that wasn't done, even though they mentioned they had network situations and network issues, but still we had that reassurance that even if that happens, when you get into a network area, that has good network, you'll be able to upload, you know, by itself. And I'm just, well, when we get the report from INEC, we'll know what went wrong, even though they say their engineers are still working, or we're working on the IREV portal.
I think the area of this technology, from the beavers to the IREV, particularly IREV, because on the field, beavers seemed like it was okay until it was time for us to upload the results into IREV and all of that we say having glitches, even as at today. I mean, the election happened on the 25th of this.
We're still getting uploads.
We are still trying to get all of the results uploaded. Who would have thought? Because given the promises that it was going to happen real time, it built a lot of confidence around the use of this technology. A lot of people were excited about the promise of, you know, a credible, smooth process where you can contest so much because you can see real time how the results are coming in and compare notes and all whatnot. So right now it's giving so much room for people. I mean, I see tons of stuff on social media, people claiming this one came from there, this one was mutilated. If it had happened real time, I mean, it will give less room for some of these issues that are being raised at the moment. So on that front, it's a tad disappointing that we couldn't achieve that, and hoping that somehow we'll be able to self-correct before the governorship election so that it's not rinse and repeat.
Well, the governorship election is on the 11th. It's a few days away.
That's what I'm saying. Like miracles happen every day.
Well,
so what miracle are we going to whip up at this point in time to ensure that we don't have exactly the same complaint? Because what would be the point anyway if we went in for the governorship election and had exactly the same complaints and people questioning the outcome? How many of these cases do you want to drag onto court at the end of the day? Well, if people say, oh, the process is incredible, it gave a lot of room, legal rooms for rigging and manipulation. Nobody needs that.
Well, the INEC chairman put out a statement and reassured Nigerians that they were going to do better at the gubernatorial elections. He also stated that the
we heard that before the presidential election. There were assurances pretty high, even down to Chatham House, that we're going to have a credible process, that everything was going to be okay. It felt like they had everything down to the last I and T, dotted and crossed.
Yes.
So,
well, the INEC staff, according to him, that did not do well would be exempted from the governorship election. So I'm guessing that maybe they're the ones who maybe tried to sabotage the process and made it slower or prevented these results.
How many of them are we looking at?
No number was given. I mean, maybe learning to
is it just
names
one part of the country, or is this spread across board? This people who were not properly trained and managed the situation very well. So there's a lot of confidence building that needs to be done to assuage, you know, fears of people that we're going to have exactly the same outcome when we get to the polls for the governorship election.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we have enough time to, you know, to convince Nigerians.
Do we have enough time? I mean, what's going to happen with the machines not being reconfigured just in time for the elections? Would that lead to it being postponed by 2 weeks? Even if INEC were to request or purchase new machines, it will take a while for it to get to Nigeria as well. You know, all of the.
I don't think the question of purchasing is what.
If they're going to think about that, just because they need to inspect these ones that were already used in the last election.
Well, for now, it's the 11th of this month, the election. If anything is going to shift, definitely we would know as we get closer and closer there. Our guest. Somehow he will join us in the middle of our conversation. We're expecting Kolawole Johnson, communication specialist, to join us on the roundtable to look at more of the stories. We've started off already registering some of the concerns around the governorship elections. And like Itodo pointed out, yes, we know that even INEC had to seek court permission to reconfigure beavers. It says it will on Monday approach the appeal court for an order to allow it to reconfigure beavers for the March 11 state election, which has caused a lot of people, you know, antennas went up to saying, okay, what does this mean in real time? What does it even mean if we need data and information from all of this? We looked at that. And there are quite a number of other stories to look at. We'll get started with them. If our guests join good time, would look more at more depth. Yeah, talking about the governorship election coming up, you know, saw this projection by SBM, and they already we know that Lagos, the contest for the heart of Lagos is so intense that sadly we're seeing it even laced with ethnic bigotry and the likes of it. It's really disappointing to see, Nigerians who you would say, oh, they're educated, some of them traveled and all of that, reducing ourselves and political argument to just ethnic issues. It's a little disturbing, actually. But it tells you how fierce the contest is, particularly for a place like Lagos, given the fact that the opposition had more votes, one of the opposition, that is, had more votes than the ruling party in Lagos State. So you can understand how desperate to be on all fronts, not just for the APC to want to retain Lagos, but also for opposition to see if they can also make a statement, particularly Labour Party that got a few more votes than the APC in Lagos State, to see if they can also replicate that at the governorship election. And SBM, well, they've taken a wider look beyond just Lagos to a number of states and projecting what state can make what and all of that. But given how we voted, it'll be interesting to see how Nigerians, back in the day, once you have the presidential election and one party wins,
it says
it's going to be a clean sweep for that party in a good number of the states.
Yeah.
But it will be difficult to predict that for this election, to saying, the chances are pretty high that the ruling party might have a bit more of the majority states. But, nothing is cast in stone just yet, given how we saw the voting pattern play out.
There's no telling how the elections will play out because of the way things happen during the presidential. And a lot of people are still worried, will my vote count? Will the election results be transmitted electronically? Would we see it in real time? And all of that. And that could maybe cut down on the number of persons who come out to vote on that day. But we're hoping that, with the reassurances we're hearing right now, more people are encouraged to come out and vote. But speaking about the tribal bigotry, for the past few days, I've just been looking like what exactly is happening. Those you thought were on your side, those you thought you were friends with, those you held in high regard, or you had high regard for, you're wondering where exactly are they coming up with all of these stories and thoughts, and are you even safe being friends with them? It just we need someone who can put us together as one, and not have people look at where you're from or where your parents are from. If your mom is from a different tribe than your father, then you're seen as not being, I don't know, it's just confusing to even look at it.
You wouldn't believe that after all these years and all the elections, it will trickle down to just the tribes and all of that. And then if you're looking at Lagos State particularly, given the fact that all the people who are actually contending for the office of the governor are from Lagos State, but then the conversation went beyond, particularly like the Labour Party, interrogating where his mother is from, bringing that one out as an argument also, and also looking at maybe perhaps the composition of people who will be voting at the end of the day, and using that also as some sort of argument to saying, if it means Lagos will be taken away from one people or the owners of Lagos. And it's always been a problem when you talk about Lagos State and this old saying about Lagos is a no man's land, and people are trying to tell you that, no, that is incorrect. There are people who are Lagosians, and this is it. Do not say it's a no man's land. Everybody's got somebody who owns where they are.
Nigerians are allowed to live anywhere. You can move from your state to a different state, start your life there, start your business, have kids, get married, and just, there shouldn't be an issue of, go back to where you're from. Like we've seen things play out recently, because you're not from Lagos, or go back to your state and, develop your own state, and don't come take what is not yours. We need unity in Nigeria. We need to understand that we are one. I saw a video where some people were being threatened. If you don't vote in this particular order, then you should not be here. You should move. I'm like, come on now.
No, it's really sad, particularly looking at the fact that some of these people should know better in terms of knowledgeable. Because if we're looking at people who perhaps do not have any formal education and capable of independent reasoning, logical reasoning, and, you would say, okay, it's a function of, lack of education. But it's sad. And then we're looking at young people also. That's also another thing. The demographic having this conversation is one that should be troubling, because you would think that we've interrupted this whole
Apparently not.
Yeah, apparently not. It's still pretty much there. There's certain things that be handed over from, either the stereotypes and all of that has been handed from one generation to the other. And it's quite sad that even with the present generation, it is still pretty much evident that we have a lot of work to do.
A lot of
in bridging
unlearning.
the gap.
A lot.
Yeah. In Nigeria. So SBM is saying SBM enough is enough, and SBM Morgan Intelligence released the result of a survey conducted to find out the likely winners of the forthcoming governorship election on the 11th of March. Nigerians will head to the polls to elect governors and members of the state houses of assembly. The governorship election will be conducted in 28 states. Others will come during the off-cycle elections. And in a report titled EIE, SPM Intelligence Election Forecast, Governorship Race, the likely winners of the governorship elections were predicted. But one interesting thing about prediction takes us back to predictions and polls. We saw quite a number of that ahead of the presidential election. Yeah, some people will tell you we're still contesting the outcome of the election, so don't be too quick to say the polls were incorrect. But as it stands at the moment, the APC is the one who's been declared as the winner.
Yeah.
So it means it goes contrary to what the position of the polls is. It might be one thing to be popular, is another thing to say who is declared the winner at the end of the day. So it will also be interesting to see if this projection by SBM
How it plays out.
plays out, looking at the state they listed. We'll talk on this and more after the break.
Hello, my name is Kimberly. I'm the host of Hard Facts, and I bring you the biggest stories driving conversation every weekday here on 95.1 Nigeria Info Hard Facts Show. I love to get your opinion and conjectures, but the facts you cannot dispute here on Hard Facts. Join me and let's talk.
Audio Jungle.
Nothing breaks the news like the news. Trust me, I can prove it. I do it every morning on Morning Crossfire from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Nigeria Info 95.1, and I'm Femi D. Amede. Join the biggest conversation around the national politics every day in a way that is trustworthy, full of passion, and yes, covers the biggest politics and the stories that matter to you. See, you have all the reasons to find out what's going on in Nigeria and be engaged differently. Let's talk. That's the way to go, even this morning.
I keep my sunny side up so they can see me from above. I keep my sunny side up. No more running from the love. No more, no more. I keep my sunny side up so they can see me from above. I keep my sunny side up. No more running from the love. Yeah, hey, pour me up some OJ, have it fresh squeeze, sizzle up some pico, and some bay leaves, make sure that it's on low, let the top breathe, let the top breathe, gotta let the top breathe, crack another egg on it, me and you could make the best omelet, yeah, never seasoned so it's our timing, you can smell the good vibes rising, I keep my sunny side up.
This is Nigeria Info.
Election. So perhaps the projection is hinged on how Nigerians voted.
Are going to vote for the next governors. But then again, we'd have to wait and see how things eventually play out, because most times these polls don't go as we hope or as we envision, and we just have to wait and see how Nigerians vote at the governorship.
Yeah.
Would the the results of the last election determine who they vote for? Will they try to prove a point by voting, differently at the governorship?
All right. So while we're talking, our guest joined us in the studio. We've got Kolawole Johnson, a communication strategist, joining us in the studio for the roundtable. Kolawole, you're welcome.
Kim, thank you, and I apologize. I'm so sorry. I have no excuse.
Welcome to you.
Today, I think I appreciate more the role of some people God has placed in our life. They make things easier for us. In fact, to my executive assistant, all of the shouts, the scream, all the noise. You did nothing. I'm telling her to this in a lie. She's doing so much. The past few days that she's been away has been something else. I'm sorry. Sorry.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we started off the conversation just talking about INEC, appeal court, governorship election. Some people are wondering, would it be the 11th? But so far, so good. It is going to be the 11th until we get word from the right relevant authority if for some reason, perhaps maybe the reconfiguring of the beavers is going to affect it or whatnot, would get to know. And then looking at the SBM projection on how the presidential election might affect the outcome of the governorship election. We're quite aware that after the presidential election, somehow either you get a tsunami vote for the ruling party in all of the state for the governorship and state houses of assembly. But given how, the vote played out this time around, particularly with the three major contenders and the fourth one also, because you can't rule out what would happen to Kano, for example, seeing that NNPP holds Kano by the jugular at this point in time, and how Nigerians are going to vote at the governorship election. I know you always enjoy putting out some of these projections, so let's start off with that.
Kim, I don't know why. In the last few days, I think the calls, this. In fact, somebody accused me that you knew about this plan. That was why he was crazy for anyone to say that. Perhaps they've not gone back to what we've done in the past about projections. You can bear witness. I told you right in this studio offline, I said Lagos would be tough for APC to win. You remember? I said they will have more votes in Lagos than even some states in the southeast. It is just a projection. The indices are there, the indicators are there. You don't do projections with your sentiment. You rely on the dynamics at play at that particular time. And so clearly, what has played out that we mentioned Kaduna, we mentioned Katsina.
I recall that conversation vividly.
I had an article written since last year about Katsina. We mentioned Kaduna, we mentioned some. These things are just there. They are not rocket science. On some projections, you see, it is you need to understand the fact that we make our projections at times from political point of view. The man is either projecting for his own party. So whatever projection you see will likely, of course, favor, the side that he wants to win.
Yeah.
But understanding the science of politics and the politics of the science of politics.
Okay.
Yes.
Subtext.
Oh, yes. Understanding the science of politics and the politics of the science of politics, you'll be able to understand many of this data. You place them in context. Where is the source? Where is this coming from? So that, again, will help you to believe or maybe probe further. But regardless of where they are coming from, you can interrogate further such data. You ask, what are their sampling population? You ask, what is the volume? You ask, what are the methodologies? If you ask these questions and you're able to have reliable answers, maybe you can agree or disagree with those data. But on the governorship election, I think from my experience in the last few days, I would like to keep quiet. Time, I not go talk.
I'm curious to know what you would say, but I mean, we know how things have played out in the past few days and how it can change the voting pattern in the governorship election. People would want to make a statement, use that avenue to ensure that they prove a point.
I said that on a television station last week. I said, because voters, in fact, we learned that some folks were destroying their voters' card. We said, no, in fact, I made a special appeal that please do not do this. Your anger, you can redirect it towards the governorship election. Go back and prove the point. If you believe what you did, if you believe, the result was not consistent with what you did at the polls, now this is the time to prove it. Go to the polls and do this convincingly well. And this time around, stay there. If they say they can't transfer, no. And in fact, if you have to follow them to the coalition center, please do so that you can prove the point this time around. I know that we may want to have the ripple effect of what happened, whatever has been, the with the presidential election.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't allow that to dampen the spirit. Let people go out to vote at all costs. However, that election itself has its own dynamics that we've not been able to study.
Which election?
Presidential election.
Okay.
They are not too far from forecast anyway, in terms of, those votes. Have you seen or did you notice that there are states where Labour won convincingly the presidential, but the National Assembly went to other parties? Have you seen that? So don't you think that should be a pointer to what will happen in the governorship? The movement around the presidential, around that presidential election was more in a particular party about the individual. Of course, the bandwagon effect threw up some persons that never imagined in their entire life that they could get there. With this short time.
Yeah.
But that is not the same scenario across board. Take, for example, in Edo State, Labour won convincingly in the presidential, but 2 Senate seats went to APC, 1 to Labour Party. How do you describe what happened also in a Delta State? You also go to Ebonyi, even in some other states like that. So this played out. So you can't take this away from those dynamics. Look at Lagos State. Look at what happened. So people were able to separate. Oh, this is what we want. In some places, they cut deals. We'll allow you to do what you want here, but here, vote for us. Oh, yeah, okay, let's do this. So they cut those deals in some places. So
is it about they cutting deals or Nigerians deciding we're not going to just blindly vote a party? It's going to be about individuals across parties.
You need to understand the population you have. We don't have the population, a larger majority of a certain demography. Well, I won't say they don't have the capacity, but they do not have the patience to subject things to critical thinking. It's a generation where you see on your WhatsApp, I made mention of this before, send this message to 20% within 20 minutes and you become a millionaire. He is sending with all the energy. Where would the money come from? From where? Go see. So this is the population. We don't subject things. So such persons don't have that patience to start over. They usually don't do that most times, but some do it. Don't forget that this election, look at the pattern. Identity politics played out clearly. Clearly, look at the pattern. If you see it very well, whether it just took a different dimension, ethno-religious, but the identity mark is there. So in places like that, it wasn't about party. It was about individual. So when you vote this one here, no, this one will not concern us. Because you don't take away the power of those parties with House of Representatives, with Senate, with a senatorial candidate.
Yeah.
They will do damage. if you don't cut them in some places.
So you think we're going to see that play out in the governorship election?
It will be a different
That a state
dimension
perhaps
entirely.
where one party got significant votes
Yes.
might go to another because of the different individual we're seeing there in spite of the party.
You mentioned Kano. Let me take Kano, for example. In the last election, 2019, you remember what happened there? Presidential, it went to APC OHA. I mean, with unusual margin, 1 point something million. But when it got to the governorship, you still remember what happened? The first ballot was won by then the PDP candidate, who is now the NNPP candidate. It was the second ballot. They had to go for a rerun. Then the governor had to go. It was a local government. It was just few words there. The governor had to bombard that place with project within 1 week or 2 weeks, about. As in tractors moved, money. It was like they were contesting for the entire state election. That was when they were able to win the state. So you can have Lagos State as, they've been consistent with that for years, where the presidential election, they struggle, but come to the state elections. I'm not saying this will follow the same pattern this time around. I'm just saying that, by antecedent, that has been the culture there. So you may have this repeating itself in a lot of places. I was there, I told you, I said, watch out for Kaduna. You never see him. Look at the margin. I said, okay, Casino may be very small margin, may not be much. But Kaduna, look at the margin. It won't be small, Look at it. If the man is not careful, the governorship election will follow the same pattern, clearly. I mentioned Benue to you. I said they'll be upset. I mean, these things are not rocket science. So there are some I can sit here to project that this would likely happen. I am not God. They may not happen. They may happen.
Let's have you speak on last-minute alliances between some of these parties, hoping that they're able to get voters to sway their way. But then, even though, for instance, Lagos and Oyo have come out to refute those claims about any alliances between the parties as to going for one particular candidate, do you think it can in any way change the voting pattern and how people decide on who the next...
And to just ride on this, talking about Oyo State, I think Oyo is the Makinde one.
Yes, I think
we know that there was also a faction, particularly one of the parties, Labour Party had a faction, and you're getting a faction saying we're in alliance with this, and other factions saying, no, that's not the true story. So it's interesting.
Leave Labour Party as a party. There was no party per se.
In this state.
It was a movement for Obi across the country. Where was the party before now? Let's not just, there was no party. In some states, you had the party collapsing.
Well, it was a party, perhaps not with a lot of structure.
Collapsing. No, there was structure across the country, but lame structure, not really working. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They've always been that you just go there, you run for election, you leave there back. The only state that did so much for Labour, Ondo State, in those states, during the governor, Mimiko. But he also left. He went to PDP. The present deputy Senate president ran for this same Senate under LP. He won. He got there, and not too long he had to leave. So you have this. I think same thing with one former governor, was it Dario Deribat? So you have them like that across board. They use them as a vehicle together. So this is the first time you're seeing like the move around the individual. If you're talking about the party, leave that aside. So you can hear some names, some left. Who were they before now? Anyway, so let's go to your state. The dynamics in Oyo will be so funny that it will be like, whatever will happen will not be because of one LP, or it will be because of PDP itself. Why? Makinde, the governor, belonged to the G5. And they were not supporting the Atiku's candidature at some point. At a point, they did not announce who they were going to follow. But, of course, we learned that some will go this way, some will go this way. And I told you long before that they won't go the same direction on this same show, live. That at the end, they will go different ways. So they may still remain together as a group. Now, in Makide's, in his own state, there were people, in fact, the party structure, a larger percentage, were already working for Atiku. There was a particular instance when Atiku was coming to meet some, maybe the party or some people in the state, and he was not carried along. He needed to like stamp his authority. Say, no. It's me and get out. So those people who must have nursed that anger against him on whatever happened during the past election, do you think they will work for him in the governorship election? First poser. Second poser. Those who lost their senatorial seat, House of Reps seat, members of the party who have structures, who are popular in the grassroots. It can't be everywhere. Do you think they will still work for him? I'll leave you with that poster.
Well, it's a rock and a hard place.
Number 3, the APC, who, if the governor said there was no deal, the APC, do you think they will not lash on this? I remember the term, self-survivor. It's always the fox rule of the game. Now, those people, I've always told you that in politics, once you form a government, you have a government in waiting. And largely, they are also within the ruling party. Now, when you have part of those in the ruling party moving and having understanding with those who are outside, you have a formidable force enough to take away whatever you have in the state on the person sitting in that position. So if I put together these indices, I can easily tell you what may likely happen in Oyo. And I've told you before long ago, I said, watch out for Oyo.
So what will happen?
Kim, I have given the indices. Make your conclusion.
All right, let's look at some comments quickly and get to the next story.
We're live on YouTube and Facebook right now, and you can watch us live at Nigeria Info Abuja. Do also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Akinwande Adebayo says, good afternoon, Kim and Itodo. Nigeria needs prayers right now. Watching from Lagos. Lagos is calm, peaceful, and sunny today. Good for you. And Usman S. Atta says, Kim and Itodo, I heard your voice. Now I can see you. Well done. Let's go straight to Facebook right now. On Facebook, we have Humble Prince JP saying, INEC chairman disappointed Nigerians during the last election, saying that beavers did not work. So how are they going to do it? Working on the governorship and the State House of Assembly elections. We want to know the way forward. And Ezekiel Andrews says, well done, Kim and Itodo. It's good to see you guys again. All right. That's it for me, yes.
Okay, and Shadrach Andrews says, my take on this is that as Buhari wants to make sure, all right, this is not even connected to what we're talking about. We're going to let that one just stay a bit. Moving to the next story, we know that members of the People's Democratic Party stayed to protest today, a peaceful one, to register their displeasure over the outcome of the 2023 election. Perhaps the way the election was conducted and some of the irregularities, particularly with the transmission of the results.
Let me go party protest, not PDP. I beg.
Why? They have a right. They came second. So if anyone should protest, the one next to it, actually, to saying...
They've been there before.
All right.
You know the history of their elections. 203, 207, 209, 211. Even 250. You remember the votes coming from different places. Why are those votes not flying around now?
Well, 215 was adjudged to be a whole lot better than the 207 that you
the
mentioned.
The more we put in measures to have credible elections, the lesser the votes we've been having. Have you noticed?
It's interesting because I was looking at it. I said, how is it that from one election cycle, you have the number of registered voters increase and the number of people who vote decline? It's not just, the math is not mathing at all.
Could there also be a duplication in the persons on the register?
That's what we're saying. It tells you that there's something off about it. The fact that you have so many people registering and less people. I mean, this is the worst we've had since 1999, the outcome of this election. And yet we had, you know...
Kim, let me run through for you. In 1999, we had a projected voters population of, I think, 58 million, and about 30 million voted. You know that, Mark? 30 million.
Well, we're coming out of the military, so you can understand the enthusiasm on the part of Nigerians to wanting...
Are you sure?
Okay.
61 million voters registration in 2003. and you had 42 million voted. Again, we beat, the percentage? That is about 70% almost. Then in 2007, you had 63 million, then 34 million voted. 207. Then by 2011, you had 74 million voters registration, and you had about 39 million voted. Now, start looking at it right from that year. Now, from 2015, we had 67 million voters and we had 29 million voted. A very sharp reduction. Why? You had two parties at each other's jugular. So you can't rig much. However,
so it's neck to neck.
Yes, neck to neck. But in their strong zones, they were still able to do, in their strong areas. They said you can only rig where you're popular. So they were still able to add those votes in those places. But by 2019, we had 82 million voters. But guess what? We turned out again 29 million votes. Remember, that was when the almighty rivers could not bring anything much. From maybe 1.5 or 1.
Yeah.
Down to, was it 300 and something or thereabout? Oh, yeah. Now, in this election, beavers came. 93 million voters registration, 87 million collected PVCs. However, you need to do your accreditation via the beavers. If you don't get accredited through that, you cannot vote. Unlike what you had before, incident 4. Okay, if you can't, they will use other form to get you accredited. And that was what got some votes from some certain part of the country. And those votes were high. And that was what Atiku went to contest in the court
the last election,
Take, for example, in Borno State. Let me use Borno as a case study. You had about 900 and something thousand votes coming from Buhari in the last election. APC could manage 252,000 this time around. Not all. 20-something%.
It's boggling how the numbers have been inflated over time.
If you have the vice presidential candidate of the party from that same place, aren't you supposed to expect something huge from there? But if you come, you know why? We have checks and balances now that are gradually bringing credibility to the process. So those vote allocation, you don't have
them. So for
people
who've argued and said the reason why we saw a significant decline, particularly if you're looking at the Kardashian state, because a lot of people were waiting with bated breath, waiting for Kano, Kaduna, and Katsina to see the outcome, hoping that it was going to, tally into 1 point, something like we saw with Buhari. And some people have argued and said it was more of the Buhari effect. And others are saying, no, it's perhaps the irregularity that we've had to contend with in the past. The fact that we had inflated figures, perhaps over time.
I've been on the field. And I can tell you, we have reported elections. What messed up this particular election is that transmission. If you leave that out, this election, I don't want to use the word most, but at least it is, you can see its credibility clearly. However, that transmission messed up the entire thing. And perhaps because you have a lot of hope, INEC raised the hope of the people. People felt this time around our vote will count because we can monitor what happened at the unit right to the very end. Not necessarily because you will count the vote on the IRF, but the fact that you're posting in there means that nobody will suspect anything in between. You can't change any figure. But this election has its own, success story. The beavers, honestly. If we can just maintain this and improve upon this and ensure that we can transmit, you will see in the next election the figures.
And the people who try to sideline it, we got to hear about overvoting and those errors were cancelled altogether. So some people try to sideline the beavers.
And once you sideline, that's all. You can't. But before now, they will sideline the process of accreditation, and yet they will still
particularly
vote.
that incident form.
They'll just fill the form, and that's all.
Yeah.
And they'll say, okay, we filled form regardless of what happened. You can't even see. We are getting better. Check the history of Nigeria election from 1959. We've always had this complaint in the process. Even in 1959, the Electoral Commission of Nigeria, headed by, was it Richard or Ronald Edward? There were complaints. 1960, we had the FEC, Kofa Bayomi, who was the chairman, had to resign before the election in 1964. 1978, Edeko, Obide. There were complaints. In 1993, won. The Abiola, of course, also, of course, even though we say it was the freest and fairest, there were complaints.
Yeah.
The only one that I think we didn't complain about was the Nekon, Abacha's Nekon. Who born you, may you complain? See what's happening. So right from this dispensation, 1999, we've been having complaints upon complaints. But what do we do? And part of those things that they have to do with the institution itself. I gave an example somewhere that in 1995, 96, we had a projected voters population of about 40-something million, with 119,973 polling units. That's about 120,000 polling units. Even when we have 100% increase in the expected voters population, the number of polling units has not increased commensurately, has not increased to also meet the voters population. That is why you have people being transferred to different polling units on the election day or a few days before.
Before the election,
so if we understand the dynamics and we plan towards it, we must have, at the point of registration, we must have moved these things long ago. Delineation is part of the process.
All right, then.
And so we keep improving, as we go. But sincerely speaking, if they had not messed up with that transmission, this election would have been a bomb.
Let's go on a break right now. When we come back, we'll take your thoughts and break for the news at 4 p.m. Stay tuned.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Nwachukwu.